Welcome to the Kiwi Mana Buzz.
Hello, this is Gary here, and this is episode 57 of our Beekeeping podcast, and we are the Kiwi Mana Buzz. And we are beekeepers from the hills of the Waitaki Ranges in West Auckland, and our podcast is about beekeeping, gardening, and political issues. And we also talk to fascinating beekeepers from around the world. And this week we're talking to James Rogers about his beekeeping in the islands of Japan. And James is an American beekeeper. He's originally from Georgia, who's lived in Japan for 12 years. For the last 4 years, he's been keeping bees in Japan, and we'll hear about his battles with the hornets, and also recently the battles with varroa mites. So, well, thanks for listening, guys. This is awesome that you've come along today and had a listen. We really, really appreciate it. And thanks for all the iTunes reviews that we've been getting. That has been absolutely amazing. So sit back and have a listen to James Rogers. So how are you there, James?
I'm doing great, Gary. It's nice to talk to you.
Yeah, it's good to talk to you too. It's fantastic. And just before the show, James was telling us he's been listening to us for 6 months, so that's fantastic.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed all the fun and the information is, the information's great and it keeps me. I know you guys your seasons are opposite to ours, but it reminds me of things that are upcoming that I have to do. So it's a great reminder,
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. So we've just given the audience a bit of an overview, but take it from here. Just tell us who you are and what you do there, James, in Japan.
Well, my name's James Rogers. Most people here call me Jim or Jimu, which is the way they pronounce my name. I first came to Japan in 1996 and was here for 4 years and was teaching at private English school. And then towards the end of that period, I met my wife, and my wife's Japanese, and we had a long distance relationship for about 2 years, and I visited her and she visited me. And on the last time she visited me, we just decided to get married, and that was when I was back in America. And then we were living in America we were back in America, I guess, 4 or 5 years. 6 years, I guess, and we had an opportunity come so that we could go back to Japan, and we decided to go back, and that was 2005. So we've actually been back in Japan since 2005, and around the winter of 2010, I got interested in bees. I was watching a video on YouTube about this Japanese man who he kept or is keeping the Japanese bee, which is a completely different species of bee, and they evolved on the island of Japan, so they are a different kind of bee. And he made these very simple hives that seemed very simple to make. So I said, hey, I can do that. And so I made my own hives, and but at that point I didn't have any bees, and so I contacted this man, and luckily he spoke some English, and I was able to communicate a little bit in Japanese with him, so we were able to get the basics done. And he told me how to try to catch a natural swarm of bees. And that was a very interesting way. It's basically, he told me, build a hive and set it up in a location where you have seen bees or bees flying, and then you have to buy a kind of, it's an orchid. In Japanese, it's called the Kinyohen orchid. And I haven't figured it out. Either the bees really like this orchid or they really hate it. I haven't decided which one it is, but if you put that orchid next to a beehive, you have a 50-50 chance of getting a swarm. And I did that. And I also put some wax inside the hive. And just before, I guess this was around, I guess it was the spring or the midsummer, June of 2010, or it could have been 2011. Anyway, I was able to catch a swarm, and I was absolutely thrilled to death that those couldn't believe that were bees in something I made, and the whole procedure actually worked. So I was very, very excited.
Oh, that's fantastic. And were they European bees or were they Japanese ones?
Well, that's really interesting. I know what a Japanese bee looks like, and I know what the European bee looks like. And these looked like European bees, but they acted like Japanese bees. And I say they acted like Japanese bees because the Japanese bees they do a kind of dance sort of in unison when a hornet or a predator comes in. They will all gather together and kind of flip their bodies up. And I think that's some way to maybe distract them or distract the bee or the hornet. And they were acting that way. And it's interesting that the Japanese bee, because they evolved here in Japan, they evolved at the same time that the giant Japanese hornet evolved. And so they have evolved a protection or a defense from the Japanese hornet. And what they do is when a scout hornet comes in and locates a nest, what the hornet will do is go in and put down a pheromone marker on where the tree is or where the hive entrance is. And the Japanese bees try to lure the scout into the tree or into wherever they are. And they lure it inside, and at some point they just all attack it, and they form a tight ball around the Japanese hornet, and they basically cook it to death.
Oh, wow.
The hornet can withstand a temperature of somewhere around 40, I think it's maybe 45 degrees Celsius. And the Japanese bees can withstand like 47 degrees Celsius or something like that. They make a ball of bees around the hornet, and they basically cook it to death.
Wow! So they've adapted
amazing.
to it. So they've adapted to their enemies. And,
right.
And the European ones, have they got that technique down or not yet?
No, they don't have that. There's absolutely they have no defense whatsoever. And if you have a group of hornets come in, or one hornet for that matter, if they come in and locate your hive, and you don't have a trap or you don't have the entrance small enough, they will come in and they can devastate a hive within hours.
Yeah. They're
so powerful.
And so how do you actually stop the hornets when you've got European ones? You're saying you've got a trap, and is that on the front of the hive, is it?
Yeah, you put a trap, and actually I took some pictures for you that I can send you, so that maybe you can put them on your blog or your site.
Yeah, we'll put that in the show notes.
But, this trap basically works because the Japanese hornets are so much larger than the honeybee itself. And you've got, basically right now what I have, well, they call them Kido Suzumebachi, which is the yellow hornet. And it's maybe 1.5 centimeters or maybe 2 centimeters large. And then you have another hornet, which is what they call the Kogata Suzumebachi, which is the smaller giant Japanese hornet. And then you have the O Suzumebachi, which is the giant Japanese hornet. The giant Japanese hornet is anywhere from 4 to 5 centimeters long. The Kogata Suzumibachi, which is the smaller version, is 3.5 centimeters long. So we're talking big bees here. I mean,
yeah, they're massive. Yeah, because
it's terrifying, when you're out there and you hear this, sound like a helicopter flying over your head. Then I mean, that you have to duck or do something. It just strikes, terror into me. Actually, they can also, these kinds of hornets kill about 80 people here in Japan every year.
Wow. Is that from stinging people?
From stinging them, yeah. And they can sting multiple times, and they also can bite. They like a honeybee, honeybee can only sting once and it pulls its stinger out. But these can sting multiple times with huge amounts of venom. So it's, but usually, when you're out there, they only have one thing on their mind, and that's food.
Yeah.
And they're not really after me. So, I've got two ways that if the trap doesn't catch them and I'm out there, then I can smack them down with a badminton racket, or I can, catch them in a butterfly net and just stomp them.
Oh, okay.
those methods work as well. So
yeah, because in your email you were saying that you use a badminton racket to good effect.
Yeah, it works very well. One smack and it's all over. And so, do you still keep the traditional Japanese hives, or have you got Langstroth hives now? Yeah, all of what I've got now are all Langstroth, but I would like to catch the Japanese bee, and I'm going to try next year just to see if I can catch a swarm. But the guy that was making these hives, he lives in Kyoto, and he told me he had around 50 hives. And it's interesting because these hives they operate exactly like the Warre hive operates. It's just a box on top of a box on top of a box, and then inside is a very simple wire cross, down towards the lower portion of the box.
Yeah.
And you just drill a couple of holes and put a wire through there, bend it around, and hammer it on either end into the wood, and you got a cross that supports your honeycomb, and that's it. The bees do the rest, and you just as things progress, you move the box up from the bottom, and the bees usually store the honey at the top. Yeah.
Oh, that's good. So James, what excites you about beekeeping?
I guess everything. It's just amazing to me that the bees, can go out and bring back food and nectar from thousands, if not millions, of flowers, and then convert that into something that's so nice and beautiful like honey. It's really exciting, and it's very healthy. Honey is very healthy. It's also antibiotic. They've used it for medicine. The Egyptians used to use honey to put on the mummies before they wrapped them up, and they've been preserved for thousands of years. So it's honey is an amazing thing, and it's wonderful to see the bees. They're very hardworking.
Oh,
they never
absolutely.
stop.
More hardworking than we are, I think, sometimes.
Right.
Very good.
It's nice to look out there and say, yep, they're working, and I can relax and not work.
Well, at least they get the rainy days off, so, you know.
Right, they do get rainy days off, and,
Yeah.
you know, they need some time off, just like everybody, you know.
Exactly.
But even still, you know, I've noticed that on rainy days, they're cleaning the hive. They're bringing out, you know, the larvae that didn't make it, or, you know, larvae that have been, you know, damaged by mites, or so they're still doing something. They're not just in there, you know, laying around.
Yeah, watching TV.
Right.
So did you keep bees back in America, or was it just in Japan?
Yeah, all of this started, you know, in Japan. There were some people in America who did have some bees, and one of the guys, I never met this person, but he lives on the road that went to my parents' house, and he had 2 beehives, and I just would pass his house and look up at his and see see his hives, and I don't know, that just, you know, he's got honeybees, you know, those are honeybees, and, you know, I think that would be really interesting to do that. So I guess that was the first time I really had seen someone who had bees, but I never visited him and never went to see the bees. I just saw them, you know, as I was driving in and driving out. So
yeah, so that
it was just something always in the back of my mind that I wanted to do.
So that must have planted the seed in your mind.
Yeah,
to keep them. Oh, that's fantastic.
Exactly.
And what part of America are you originally from?
I'm from Georgia, actually.
Okay.
The biggest city to where we are is actually Atlanta.
Yep.
And my parents live in Gainesville, Georgia. Gainesville's it's a nice place. There's a big lake there. My parents now have just some fantastic property that you know is just begging for someone to have beehives on it. But my dad's getting on up in age now, and I don't think he's ready for a new hobby, which is unfortunate because the property is it's perfect for bees.
Oh, okay. Because we interviewed, I'm not sure if you read Linda Tillman's blog, but we interviewed her, and she's from Atlanta in Georgia.
Yeah, I listened to her on your podcast. So,
yeah, that's right.
She seemed really, really nice.
Yeah, she was a very nice lady. Yeah.
Very knowledgeable about bees as well.
Absolutely.
Mm.
And so you've been beekeeping for 4 years now, but we'll just do a bit of time travel here. If you could travel back before you kept bees, when you were driving along that road in Georgia, what would you tell yourself?
What would I tell myself? You got to get some bees. That's what I'd say.
Yeah, it's a good start, isn't it?
Yeah. You know, another, you know, on that road, if you go farther down that road out into the countryside of Georgia, there's another pretty famous beekeeper very near to my father's property, and that's Don Kuchenmeister, the fat bee man.
Oh, okay. Yep.
So actually 2 years ago when we went back home for Christmas, I made it a point to go see Don. Really nice guy. We didn't get to play with any bees because it was too cold, but I got to see where he was, and I bought some honey from him, and my father went with me and was entertained by Don. So.
He seems like a real character, doesn't he?
He is a character. Yes, he's a fun guy.
Yeah, I'll try and get him on the podcast one day. Yeah, no, he's awesome.
Yeah, he's a great guy. He knows a lot about bees.
Yeah, he does. And he runs courses too, doesn't he?
He does. Yeah. I'd love if we ever move back to the States, then I'm definitely going to take his course.
Yeah, absolutely. Should be good. Yeah, I like the way he's kind of he's got like simple like fixes for things, and he's just very common sense way of beekeeping.
Yeah,
it's true.
He's a very, very practical guy. Don't need all the gizmos and gadgets, and if you do, In some cases, you actually do. Then he just makes them.
Yeah, exactly.
His feeder, his hive top feeder that he's made is really good. I have not done it yet, but I may build one of his hive top feeders just because I think they're so good. And the bees won't drown at all. And if you use his method, so
yeah, because you can get the plans off his website, can't you?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm keen to do that as well. I'll give that a go and see if it what it's like. Because that is a big problem with feeders nowadays. Is they do tend to drown, don't they? Some of the bees.
Yeah, even if I use primarily now just the frame feeders.
Yeah.
And then I'll put in some dead sticks or some kind of wood that floats in there, and the bees can float on those pieces of wood and not drown. But you still have a few that don't make it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, I'm keen to make one of those as well. I'll have to get hold of those plans.
Mm.
So what do you think is the biggest issue facing beekeeping in your area besides the hornets? Or was that the biggest issue?
Well, the hornets are definitely a big issue, but mites.
Oh, okay. It's varroa mites?
Yes. They are really bad, especially this year. When I first started, I was doing everything myself here, but around, well, it was last year, 2011, 2012, during that year, this was an amazing coincidence because my wife's grandmother's friend's brother actually is a beekeeper here.
Oh, okay.
And he has had bees over 15 years. And he was nice enough to come over and look at my setup. And at that time, I was using a long hive that I built myself, but was able to put in, Langstroth size deep frames in. And he was not impressed. He was not impressed at all with my design. And he decided, so why don't you let me help you and take these bees back to my apiary, and I'll help you overwinter these bees and treat them, show you how I treat them for mites. And I agreed. And if I hadn't done that, I would have lost another group or another colony of bees.
Yeah.
And so during that time, I would go to his place, and he showed me how to make frames, and he showed me how he was treating for mites, and he was using Apistan. And I was a little bit, I was like, I don't know whether I want to use Apistan or not, but at the same time, I want to have bees. And so I just decided I'm going to do whatever he does, and just so I can learn the basics. And then once I have several strong colonies of bees, then I can decide whether I want to continue to use Apistan or something else. And that's where I am. I've decided that, first of all, Apistan here in Japan is, the mites are becoming resistant. And just like they became resistant, in America. And, so now I've switched to oxalic acid. It's the application that, I want to do this, quickly and efficiently. And, I know that Kiwi Mana has a oxalic acid vaporizer, but I think
that's right, we do.
You guys do, and I've seen it and I've looked at it, but I think the actual cup where you put the oxalic acid is the width of it may be too wide for us here in Japan to get it actually into the hive.
Okay.
Because the openings where the bees come out, is 6 millimeters.
Okay.
And that's so that the hornets can't get in and the bees can get out. But I don't think I think it's too thick to actually put in the hive.
Yeah, you mean the height of it? Because I think the height's about 8 mils. So yeah, it
8
would
millimeters,
be too thick unless you propped it up for the 2 minutes you're doing the vaporizing stuff.
Right, and see, and I know you said prop it up, but the basically traditional hives here, the brood nest is one box.
Oh, okay.
It can't be separated from the bottom. I don't know why they do that, but it's just the way they do it. And all the equipment that I have out there, I purchased from a bee supply company, and the quality is very good, and they're all made from cedar, and it's a really nice design, great ventilation. But the only problem with it is that there is no it's all solid bottom boards.
Yeah.
There's no mesh board at the bottom, and it is nailed to the box.
Yeah.
So unless you get it, then you do your own modification to it.
You'd have to. Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
what you could do is we do it through the mesh board. So if you did have a mesh board, you could actually stick it underneath the mesh and then do it that way and seal the front up. But I mean, if you haven't got
there's mesh at the front and at the back of the hive for ventilation.
Okay.
And those mesh, it's a little board that will slide up and down, and it's got its own little track, and you can slide it up or slide it down. The mesh inside is very small. It's either galvanized aluminum or stainless steel mesh. I'm not sure what it is, but maybe, you could put I don't know. You'd have to drill a hole in there.
Yeah.
I don't know how at this point how to get it in there.
Yeah, that's true. Well, we'll work on that offline.
Okay.
We're keen to sell you one, so no. Because that's the problems we've found here in New Zealand is that a lot of the commercial products are the mites are becoming resistant to them, so that's why we've looked at alternatives.
Yeah.
And the vaporizer is one thing we use, and the Fimol treatments as well. We use those too.
Is it possible to only use oxalic acid for mite treatment?
I think you could, because the mites don't become resistant to it because it actually kills them, so they can't actually build up resistance to it. So yeah, you could just use that.
Well, that's really the way I'd like to go. Not to say that I wouldn't use anything else, but I've made up my own version of Honeybee Healthy, and when I do feed the bees, they get some of that. They get the wintergreen and lemongrass oil and spearmint and tea tree oil.
Yeah.
And that is supposed to prevent some mite growth. Another thing I'm doing is I'm trying to do at least 50%, or maybe at least 40%. I'm trying to get the bees to draw their own comb and not use any foundation. And that's actually been quite successful this year.
Yeah. And what do you do? Do you have a starter strip, or do you just use the how do you get them to start the wax?
I'm not doing anything. I just put the frame in there, and it's wired. Some of them are wired, and some of them are not. And I think they just started building the wax, and I didn't use any starter strip at all.
Wow!
And I was just amazed how fast they built that out. I've got this year's been great. I started when I came out of winter last year. I had the original hive that came out of winter that I had at Takimoto-san's, which he was my mentor, if you will, and I also had a split from him. And starting this year, this spring, I've turned those 2 hives now into 10 hives, and the bees have just gone crazy. It's just been in the last month or two that I'm starting to notice some issues with mites, and so I've been really trying to treat with oxalic acid using the pipe method. And I just went to the hardware store and got some plumbing parts and put them together, and and force the hose, the pipe in there into the front entrance and vaporize the oxalic acid that way. So.
Oh, okay. That sounds similar to what we do, but just a different way of doing it. How's that working?
Well, it's working because my best, strongest hive, it's right after I did that treatment, I kind of hung around to see, what the results were going to be, and I saw mites coming out big time. The bees were bringing out dead mites, and there were mites all along the front entrance. And so I'm pretty sure they had quite a heavy load.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I've got one more treatment to go since we've, gotten into a new week here. Probably tomorrow or this afternoon, I'm going to get out there and do one more treatment on all the hives. So.
Yeah, sounds good. And how do you count your mites?
Well, because the hives that I have don't have screen bottom boards, it's difficult for me to do those mite counts. And I know how to do a sugar roll. I've seen how you do a sugar roll, but I've never actually done it. Okay. So I've got to do that. I have to, just take a frame of bees, shake them off in a small plastic box, and then kind of funnel them down into a glass jar, put some sugar down in there, shake them around. Yeah, and, we do that. It works really well. So there's a blog post on our blog about how to do it. So, I'll look at that. Yeah, we'll put that in the show notes too. I've been looking, and maybe this is probably not good, but when you start seeing crawlers out in front of the hive, and you start seeing bees with the deformed wing virus, then it's definitely time to do something. And maybe it's I don't think it's too late at that time, but it may be too pretty hard on the bees to start then. Yeah, that does indicate that the count must be quite high if they're walking around on the frames and stuff. Yeah. But I'd check that sugar shake thing out, because that's a really good way to count them. So and it doesn't matter if you've got a mesh board or not. So what is it if you get about a cup full of bees and you put them in a jar and you shake it around, and if you have 10 mites or more, I think it's half a cup, which is about 300 bees. Okay. And I think it's 3 or more you got to worry about. 3 or more. Okay. Yeah. But I'll include in the I'll drop you an email with the article to do about that. Okay. How to do it. I'll give you a hand. Yeah. And I'll put it in the show notes for anyone listening to this too. Okay. Yeah, and the show notes for this one are going to be kiwimana.co.nz/57 for anyone listening. Yeah, I think it's really important to count the mites so you can see if your treatments are working, which is really important these days, because especially with Epistan or other products, if it's not working as desired, then you're not going to realise it until it's too late. Right. Yeah. Exactly. Oh, that's cool. And so, what do you think's the biggest mistake you see new beekeepers making? Are you in a bee club over there? Actually, no, I'm not. I'd love to find one to get involved with, but basically my bee club is myself and Takimoto-san, who is about 10 kilometers from here. He and his son-in-law have about 60 hives now. And basically, they're my bee club. But I have to. Takimoto-san does not speak any English at all. So when I'm there, I have to only speak Japanese, and it's a challenge, and it's sometimes it's fun, but I'm sure there's some things that are missed in translation. Yeah. But I've been here long enough that I have I do have a small degree of fluentness, but I'm not going to kid myself and think that I understand everything. It's difficult.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, well, if anyone out there's from Japan and knows a bee club, get hold of James.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, we'll put some. Do you mind giving it your email address on air or not?
Yeah, not at all. It's honeybees in Japan at gmail.com.
Okay, so if anyone's listening out there, you can drop James an email, or
it's
even
all lowercase.
Yeah, or even just get in touch and talk about bees. So.
Right.
Or maybe you guys can all form your own bee club,
Yeah, we could start. I'd be up for that.
Yeah,
sure.
For sure. Oh, that's cool. And so what's your beekeeping plans for the coming season?
Well, I've got 10 hives now, and I would, if I can pull all 10 through the winter, that would be great. But I think it would be maybe safe to say that I could have somewhere in the neighborhood of 7 go through the winter. If I'm really lucky, all 10 will come through. But I'd like to be at 20 hives for next year. I actually have 4 production hives right now, with the others as support. I would like to increase my honey production. This spring was really good. I got the first year when I had my bees at my mentors. The spring harvest was 4 kilos, and the summer harvest was 25 kilos, and we had a little bit of harvest in the late summer, and so basically you can harvest honey 3 times, and then the 4th, when the goldenrod comes out, I give that all back to the bees.
Yeah.
For the winter time, and but that first year that I had the really successful hive going. Altogether, we got about 48 kilos. In comparison to now, our spring harvest was 27 kilos. So that was really good.
Yeah, that's good.
And according to Takimoto-san, this is an off year for him. And he said that you have a good year, and then you have a moderate year, and then you have a good year, and then you have a moderate year. And we're in the moderate year period now. But because of the mites and maybe, the weather's been pretty good. We've had a lot of rain recently. And we've also had 2 typhoons come through here. And, but they missed us. They didn't hit us, but we got the rain. And that's kind of slowed honey production down. But my goal for next year is to really increase honey production. And I'd like to, Takimoto-san, last year harvested 1.5 tons of honey.
Wow.
That's a lot of honey.
And that's from 60 hives.
No, actually that was from around 35 hives.
Wow.
So that's really good.
Very good.
And, yeah.
And so the Japanese bee, is it adapted to the varroa mites? Was that getting devastated by them as well? They are
also affected by the varroa mite, but typically, the cell size, their comb cell size is much, much smaller. It's just noticeably smaller. They're just a much smaller bee than a European honeybee. And, just because of their cell size and, their genetics, I think they do better. They are very, very prone to swarming, the Japanese bee. They are not the number one bee that people choose to have here in Japan. People here choose to have the European, the honeybee for honey production. But, there are the purists, like the guy in Kyoto, the first guy that I met, who, they want to keep the Japanese bee. They want to do everything wild. you just give the bees boxes and let them do what they're going to do. If they swarm away, then so be it. You can catch another swarm next year. So that's what he does.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. Yeah. So what's one book that you'd recommend or a resource you'd recommend to new beginners?
Let's see. Well, I've got the Practical Beekeeper book, and I also read the Beekeeping for Dummies. Now, that whole Dummies series, some people, love it and some people hate it. But, I actually found the Beekeeping Dummies book for, quite interesting and informative. It's current and so, you can try that and you may like it, you may not. Michael Bush's book, The Practical Beekeeper, I don't have that book, but his website is just fantastic. Other sources, the Bee Source, the website Bee Source is a great resource.
Yeah, that's the forum. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Michael Bush book is good. I do like it.
Did you get that? You have that book, right?
Yeah, I've got that, and it's it's awesome. Been reading it.
Yeah.
And the Beekeeping for Dummies was our first beekeeping book, so it's really good.
Yeah.
It's Howard Blackstone or something,
Right.
Yeah, that's really good. Yeah, that practical one, I hear that's good from a lot of people, so I might look out for that one too.
Yeah, it's pretty good. It's got really nice color photographs and it's not overly scientific, and it's not, it's just basic, everything you need to know.
Yeah, oh no, that sounds good. I was going to ask you, what's your main nectar source in Japan?
Well, in the springtime, we have the first thing that blooms around here is now this is the Japanese name for that flower. It's called nanohana, and nanohana is a rape. It's what they make the canola oil from.
Oh, okay, like a rapeseed
flower. Yeah. And that comes out first, and it's got a wonderful smell, and the nectar, it has a lot of nectar. The second thing that blooms in the springtime is the cherry blossom trees. There are hundreds and hundreds, thousands of cherry blossom trees here in Japan. Yeah. But in this area where we are, then we have just, wild cherry blossom trees growing in the mountains, and then, cultivated cherry blossom trees that grow in the parks and so forth. And the bees go after that nectar, and they make a fantastic honey from the cherry blossom nectar. So basically, the honey that's produced in the springtime is the majority of it is from cherry blossom and rape, and it's a wonderful golden sweet honey.
Oh, okay, sounds awesome.
It's really nice, yeah.
Yeah, and the cherry blossom is kind of an iconic flower in Japan, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yeah. And it is the aroma from that honey is just fantastic. It's really amazing.
Oh, and is it a light tasting honey?
It's light, yeah. It's light and sweet, and the color is this light sort of golden color. It's just beautiful.
Yeah, fantastic.
I have people, they're waiting. They want more of that honey right now. So it's like, you guys, I'm sorry, you're going to have to wait till next year. It's all gone.
That's people don't realize you have to wait for honey, because it doesn't just appear, does it?
No.
A lot of effort involved. And so you've got a really fantastic YouTube channel as well, haven't you there, James? So we'll include those in the show notes too, because I've been watching your videos.
Gary, I appreciate that compliment very much, but I mean, it just kind of chronicles some of the things I've been doing with the bees, and maybe I did the right thing, maybe I did the wrong thing, but yeah, the site is Honeybees in Japan is the YouTube channel, when I caught the swarm, I've got a video that kind of chronicles, what I did and, how I built the hive and got the flower and, shows the bees arriving or shows me taking a video of the bees in the hive when I first discovered that they were there. So, and then, other experiment. I've built a Tanzanian long hive. I built a Kenyan top bar hive, which I don't have bees in right now. I just kind of went crazy building different kinds of hives, and I don't know. The first group of bees that I caught that I was so happy with, I tried to move them into my Kenyan top bar hive, and at that point I did not have a smoker, and I decided, I'll just build a little fire behind me. Well, a little fire turned into a big fire, and these bees were wild. So the queen started smelling all the smoke and decided to get out of the hive, to move locations. Okay. And so they started clustering on this tree, and
no.
I was able to catch that first swarm and cluster, just cut the branch off and put the branch and the bees back in the Kenyan top bar hive. But I didn't close all the holes, which I should have done, and let them calm down. But anyway, they left again, and then the giant Japanese hornets got them. So that was devastated.
So your simulation of a forest fire was too realistic.
Yeah, right. Yes. Yeah, it was definitely a small wildfire.
Well, thanks so very much for coming, James, tonight. It's been fantastic, and I'm sure all the people out there are going to enjoy this show. So,
great.
So,
great.
cheers for coming along.
Well, thanks. We'll have to keep in touch, Gary.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Will you stay on the line, and I'll just close the show up. So,
sure,
thanks everyone, and the show notes for this one with James will be kiwimana.co.nz/57, and we'll have all the links to all his great stuff, his videos and all the stuff out there. So thanks for coming, everyone, and we'll talk to you next time.
Nice.
Okay. Oh, that's good.
Gary, is that your guitar riff?